Well, good morning and welcome to Mirador Television, broadcasting from the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, East Sussex, in the United Kingdom. And we only just made it this morning, not because we were late in, but as usual, there were all sorts of things to do before we actually went on the air. But here we are, we've made it. And we are going to be with you for about 3/4 of an hour and then take a break until 10 o'clock when Dr. Mark maybe will be along to do an hour with us about education, his brave new experiment of a university without lecture halls, his thoughts on what's happening in the rest of the world in terms of education. And also, perhaps starting off experimenting with the odd apprentice for television. Right, okay, and then at about 10:30, 10:45, we have John Henty as usual to brighten up our day with his perky approach to absolutely everything. So let's start off and take a look at the papers, which I haven't done myself. Well, not properly. The Financial Times. Israel prepares for ground invasion, and I suppose that many of us have feared that they are not going to sit back and take the savagery which they. Which is undertaken by Hamas. There's a big debate in the media about those who are supporters of Palestine and Gaza and that whole issue in the Middle East between the Palestine and Israel. Celebrated what took place. There are other, should we say, controversies amongst some stars refusing to talk about the issue because of their own personal leanings. And there is a real build-up of criticism that the BBC won't call the Hamas terrorists. They insist on calling them militants. I have some sympathy with that. I work for the BBC and I work for Reuters. And actually, I don't think that it is a bias towards terrorists. It's that they do lean over backwards to try and be as fair as they possibly can. The old phrase was, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And I must say that at Reuters, we were also instructed to follow that we did not use the word terrorist. So it's not just the BBC, it's a general leaning towards international journalism. That I can understand a wee bit. The rest, no. It is pure savagery. It is pure savagery. Financial Times, Wednesday's newspapers continue to lead with Hamas attacks on Israel. The Financial Times reports that Israel pounded the Gaza Strip on Tuesday and prepared for a ground invasion of the enclave 3 days after an attack by Hamas. the attack triggered the bloodiest war on the country's territory for decades. In the UK, the paper says the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has promised to bulldoze the planning system and work with the private sector to unleash a big build across the UK as part of a radical action to accelerate house building. Here we go with this obsession of house building again. Everybody's got to have a house. Doesn't matter, pull down every tree, take away every sprig of grass. Everybody's got to have a house. I don't understand it. They don't do it on the continent. It's not the French method. It's not the German method. No, two of the big powerhouses of Europe. It's not that, for that matter, it's not the method of some of the smaller countries. I've lived in Kosovo, I've lived in Bosnia. Yes, of course there is house building, but you don't see great swathes of the country being turned over to houses for the sake of doing away with natural beauty. So I'm sorry, Sir Keir, you haven't got my vote on that one. The Guardian: Israeli troops mass on Gaza border as Hamas attack death toll hits 1,000. The Guardian reports that a huge Israeli military buildup was continuing along Gaza's border on Tuesday, as the country's military confirmed the death toll from a Saturday as Hamas attack had passed 1,000. The paper also displays an image of Starmer and his wife Victoria at the end of his party's conference and his speech in Liverpool. I don't know whether he should have paid more attention to this scene, whether that was deliberate or not, or he just went on with his plans. But anyway, they show a picture with the quote, "We'll heal wounded Britain," Starmer promises despairing Tory voters. I'm sorry, I've heard all this before. I have heard all this before, and I've heard it from the other parties as well. And it's the same old claptrap that we get from all the political parties. I'm on record as saying there are 650 members in the House of Commons, and I wouldn't give you tuppence for any of them, but I haven't changed my mind. They spout the same political rhetoric, the same nonsense, and they actually do nothing. It's time that they got out of that chamber more often and got their fingers dirty. We had a very good constituency MP who still managed to make his mark in Westminster, in Norman Baker. I don't share his political opinions, don't share his views, but we have some very congenial lunches together, in which we discuss a lot of things, including politics, of course. And he was the best constituency MP that this town ever saw. And if I may say so, one of the best constituency MPs I've ever bumped into myself. He spent time at Westminster as well and was very effective. Why don't they get out and see what it is that we really want? What are they afraid of, meeting us face to face? Why do they closet themselves away in a chamber? Away in a chamber. Right. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know. I really don't know. But if politics doesn't change in this country, we're going to stagger from crisis to crisis. Same set of responses to the problems that the country faces, and we're never going to get anywhere. What a pity. Here was a prime opportunity for him, and he missed it. He dropped the ball. The Daily Mail. They start the real reasons Holly dramatically quit this morning by the writer who knows her best. Well, you have to buy the paper if you want to read that. Their headline in the Mail was, "This was a Holocaust, pure and simple. Babies beheaded. 40 children shot dead in a single settlement. Families burned alive. Sam Greenhill meets survivors of the Hamas death squads and hears their stories of unimaginable horror. I can imagine. Can you imagine if gunmen and sword waving hordes poured into your town and just without regard for any consideration whatsoever slaughtered everybody? Can you imagine the feeling of horror? This is happening and it's not happening. The Mail reports on the horror of Israel's 9/11 and says Hamas gunmen massacred 40 children in one farm. The paper quotes a bereaved grandson, Shmuel Harrell, who said, "This was a Holocaust, pure and simple." The paper features a photo of Holly Willoughby after the British TV presenter dramatically quit this morning. Oh. I love this stuff inside the television media because I know it so well. Yeah. The Eye. The UK government, two little banners at the top. UK government pressure BBC boss to call Hamas terrorists in news bulletin. And there is a picture of Starmer holding a man back. Power, not protest. Starmer shrugs off glitter attack with appeal to floating voters and disillusioned Tories. He seems to Gary Glitter. Is it Gary Glitter? Took him to task. He promises new towns. Biggest house building surge since 1970. Oh, I hate reading that. I don't want to read that. And decades of renewal. Oh, yeah. Labour leader says he is heir to Blair. Oh, that's even worse. I'm not being politically biased. I'm just making comments about I've heard it all before and I've seen it all before. And really, the fact of the matter is the only reason I don't worry about the countryside is he won't do it. Massacre of the innocents is the main story. The I newspaper reports that babies and children were killed by Hamas in a village massacre at Kfar Aza, near the Gaza border. The paper says US President Joe Biden described the Hamas attack as pure evil and compared the group to the Islamic State group. The paper also shows an image of Starmer covered in glitter after a protester stormed on stage during his speech at the Labour conference. That's what the glitter was. I take it all back, Gary. I guess you've got it anyway. A long time ago. The Daily Mirror, Holly quits. The Daily Mirror has been very odd. One day, on Monday, it totally ignored this issue in Israel. Totally. There's nothing on this front page at all. And yesterday, it really went to town on it. And now it can't resist putting the entertainment field back into the headlines. Holly quits. I have to leave this morning for me and my family. Oh, and they're back on the political trail. The headline in the Mirror isn't at all about Israel and Gaza. It's about Starmer. My promise, a Britain built to last. Labour leader defies glitter-throwing protester to sparkle with a rallying call. The Labour leader makes the headlines in the Daily Mirror, which says Starmer offered the nation hope for the future as he vowed to undo the damage caused by years of Tory misrule. Willoughby's departure from this morning after 14 years also appears in the paper. Whoever wrote that, the Eye Examiner, for God's sake, Jesus. I mean, she appears in the paper. Yeah. Doesn't she ever? Doesn't she ever? Well, Daily Telegraph. Hamas massacres babies and children. It does have a picture of Starmer on the front page with Britain's future. But also, I can't resist it. It's action, action, action. Is the glitter being poured over him by a protester? Not sure what the guy was protesting about. The Daily Telegraph also reports that dozens of dead civilians were found in the kibbutz of Kfar Aza, with soldiers at the scene comparing the murders to the Nazi pogroms of the Second World War. Wow. The Metro. Holly quits is their banner, but 40 babies murdered by Hamas is the main headline. Children beheaded as families slaughtered, says Israel. ISIS-level savagery, says the US, as Americans held hostage, and Hamas begins a new blitz after 2 terror chiefs die in the raid. The Metro reports on claims that Hamas militants murdered 40 babies in a massacre at a kibbutz during their savage assault on Israel. The paper quotes Israel Defense Forces, their commander, Major General Itai Veruf, who said, "It's not a war, it's not a battlefield, it's a massacre." The Sun. The Sun hasn't broken ground. The Sun on Monday, once again, like the Mirror, didn't pay much attention to what was going on in the Middle East. Perhaps he didn't know, but that's hard to believe. It's hard to believe with seasoned journalists. They can't have been diverted so much by other things. But Holly Willoughby does get a banner, a photograph. But the slaughter at the kibbutz is "Mummy, help me." A girl's call to mum as Hamas kidnapped her. Savages beheaded babies in massacre. The Sun has reports of a mother who listened helplessly as Hamas kidnapped her young daughter, an elderly mother. Wow. The Times. It has got a sidebar with Starmer promises a decade of renewal. Hamas cut the throats of babies in a massacre. That's their headline. The Times reports that the death toll at Kfar Aza was rising, with entire families having been shot as they slept. The paper quotes Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who warned that the relations in which targets were destroyed across Gaza for that day had only just begun. Wow. It really looks as if we're going to have a bloodbath again. And there's nothing much we can do about it except protest that on either side it is pure savagery. Pure savagery. The best thing that Netanyahu could do is to sit back and let the world condemn the militants, the Hamas militants. Let the world do the condemnation, because it is appalled that such savagery could take place. Daily Express. Horror at pure evil beheading of babies. The Express also leads on the Hamas attack on families in Kfar Azaz by Hamas. The paper says the war crimes also condemned by United States President Joe Biden, who said, "There are moments in this life when a pure, unadulterated evil is unleashed on the world." The Daily Star. Well, we can always go to the Daily Star for a giggle. Not that this is a time to giggle, but what the heck. It has a fairly bold banner at the top, Holly, I quit. But its main story is Boffs. Fungi will cure the world's diseases. Yet a mushroom, it says. And the Daily Star says, fungi boffins claim a new species of mushroom will hold the key to beating diseases. Wow, fantastic. Let's just take a little bit longer. Israel's war with Hamas dominates coverage. The Guardian says the bodies of victims are still being recovered 4 days after the attacks. Reports of children being killed in the village of Kfar Aza are reflected in the Eye, which carries the headline, Massacre of Innocents. This was a Holocaust pure and simple, says the Daily Mail. The Express talks of barbaric terrorists from Hamas. The Times reported Ashel Pfeiffer, who visited the village, says the killings there are likely to be the greatest loss of civilian life in a terrorist attack in Israeli history. Israel prepares for a ground invasion is the headline in the FT. With news of a further 60,000 reservists mobilized. The paper reports on a warning from the United Nations as a severe shortage of water in Gaza, which is under a tightened Israeli blockade. The Sun features a photo of devastated buildings in Rimmel, Gaza, after Israeli airstrikes with the headline, Reduced to Rubble. A former chief of the General Staff, General Lord Dannett, urges caution in Israel's response. Writing in the Telegraph, he says an Israeli ground assault could result in the death of large numbers of Palestine civilians and the destruction of much of the already impoverished infrastructure of Gaza. This, he adds, would play into the hands of Iran. But elsewhere in the paper, the former Army Colonel Richard Kemp argues for the deployment of overwhelming force against Hamas, saying Israel must focus on crushing its will to exist, something which is only attainable by eliminating fighters in large numbers and destroying combat capability through a devastating military force. And there's a picture of soldiers, presumably Israeli soldiers, going in. So Keir Starmer interrupted speech at the Labour Party conference, makes many of the front pages. There are photos of the protesters covering him in glitter, with the headline Starmer's Time to Shine in the Daily Telegraph and Starmer versus Stormer in the Metro. The Daily Mirror describes Starmer's speech as rousing. In its leading column, it says he delivered a stunning, compelling, persuasive case for political change. Oh, yeah, I can make that case and have been for quite some time. The politicians don't listen to it. The Times describes him as steady Starmer. It says he sounded like a prime minister in waiting. It adds there are still questions to answer about the party's policies. For the Mail, he was shallow, secure, taking voters for fools. With an election in the offing, the paper says voters deserve to know in specific detail how Labour would charge or change their lives for the better. Just another couple of very quick items. A number of the papers research, papers report research, which suggests the impact of private renting on biological aging is nearly double that of being unemployed, and greater than that experienced by smokers. the impact of private renting. Wow. The Times says owning your own home can slow down the aging process because it is less stressful than renting. The former Oasis singer Liam Gallagher has lent his voice to a new project, the iReels. Manchester's Metrolink passengers will hear his work for the first time this week when he becomes the voice of tram stop announcements on the service as part of a festival in the city. Well, very interesting. Very, very interesting. But not very believable, any of it, in my view, I'm afraid. Let's see if we can catch up on the weather, which is very important to all of us. Lewis weather. Here it is. Well, it's going to be quite warm again today, and in fact, it is quite warm this morning. I came in on my trusty little mobile scooter, bum 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 bum, behaving like Toad of Toad Hall. And today it's going to be cloudy with scattered sunshine gaps. 20 degrees, 15 degrees. It started out. Right now, it's 18. Wow, now that's an advance on what it was this time yesterday morning, by quite a bit, actually. I think it was only about 13 or 14 yesterday morning at this time. And it's not going to lose cloud throughout the day, but it's not going to rain either. And there's no chance of rain, it says, at all. There is a moderate breeze, and looking ahead, tomorrow we're going to get some rain. We're still going to get scattered showers. It is going to drop in temperature a little bit. It's 18, and we can expect an up and down week next week. On Friday, we've got 20 degrees again, but some rain along with the sun. Saturday, we're going to get the sun, but it's only going to rise to about 14 degrees. It's going to be quite chilly. Sunday, we're going to get the sun, and it's going to be even chillier, 13 degrees. And Monday, the 16th, is going to be plummet down to 13, and it's going to stay there all day. That's going to be the high. But still a lot of sun. Tuesday, still a lot of sun. The temperature starts to rise again. It's 15 degrees. Followed on Wednesday, the 18th, by more sun and a higher rise in temperature. So there you are. At 8:29, it's 8:29 now. In Lewis, East Sussex, and in the county of the county is East Sussex, in the state of Great Britain. We are the county town. We do not take ourselves as local. We prefer to think of ourselves as a hybrid that we like to think of ourselves as what shall I say? That we fall between two stools, and that we try hard to reflect national news as it impacts local people, and local news important enough to be of interest to those abroad. So let's just go above the town for a minute. Oh, we can, yes, we can. It's just by magic, there I am back again. Okay, that is that's a roundup of the front page. There are two main stories, if you want to call one of them main. One is that the aftermath, the eyewitness, and the consequences of the attack by Hamas on Israel. And secondly, the fact that Holly Willoughby has now quit following Philip Schofield out of this morning's program. The first, horrific. The second doesn't actually shake my bones. But that's what people want to read, I guess. So we'll, first of all, I'm going to take a little sip of coffee. And then, as I say, for one reason or another, we won't be back for another, let's see, 50 minutes or so. And we'll be back with Mark Maybe and find out all about his university without lecture halls. For the moment, I'm Keith Hayes. This is Mirador Television, and I'm happy to say that it is a nice day out there. It's warm, it's cloudy, and we're going to have scattered clouds throughout the day. It's a gentle breeze. All in all, we should all feel very, very happy. Until 10 o'clock, I'll say toodle-pip.